Unfortunately, this is one of those instances where I'm gonna have to say I don't fucking know. The idea of draconian magic has sort of eluded me and evaded me. Is it dragon magic? Well, no, but kind of. Thanks, that was incredibly helpful. Whenever I see draconian or draconic, it's almost always exclusively modern and contemporary left-hand path stuff. And it's demons that have something to do with draconian magic, not dragons. Oh, well, don't you know demons have a draconic aspect? A dragon aspect? Well, similar, but no. Thanks. That was incredibly helpful. And then in some instances, people will bring up the Kundalini, which is a part of Hindu spirituality. And let me rephrase that. I don't know if that's an accurate term to refer to it by, because I know about that much of its proper context. So why are we messing with Eastern mysticism in our Western occultism? Because when the Kundalini is activated, it goes up in a spiral and it looks a lot like a caduceus as found in Hermeticism. Cool, is it the same thing as the caduceus? Well, kinda, but not really. Thanks, that was incredibly helpful. And sometimes when I see something about it, there's a reference to ley lines. Ley lines are this theorized thing that are energetic currents that either run above in the Earth's atmosphere or are a part of the Earth's crust, and there are nexus points where ley lines intersect, and these are incredibly powerful points of power. And it just so happens that a lot of structures overlap ley lines or are at the center of one of these nexus points. At best, I can conclude that it is the energy system of the planet itself. And oftentimes people will bring up that this same concept was referred to as the dragon lines in China and Japan. But are we actually talking about the same shit? Well, I mean, probably. It's incredibly likely. Super helpful, once again. And then people will bring up Tiamat, or Leviathan, or Jormungandr. All of these different deities or spirits hailing from different cultures, pantheons, and religions. And somehow they're a part of this draconic path as well. But they are dragons, I think, kinda sorta. Even though Tiamat is sort of the progenitor of the gods as well as the demons. But Sumerian demons are a little bit different than Christian demons. And Leviathan, although similar to other dragon-like creatures, it's probably more accurate to refer to Leviathan as a sea monster. And I don't think it's entirely accurate to suggest that Jormungandr is a dragon. Jormungandr is the world serpent, offspring of Loki. How do they have any connection at all? All this just to say, I don't know if there is a older than modern draconic tradition. From what I can tell, it is a very loosely stitched together conglomeration of multiple different things from multiple different cultures and multiple different religions. And honestly, I could be wrong. If nothing else, this is a demonstration to profess that I just don't know everything. But the way that I have come across it, the way that I have loosely been privy to it, it's New Age spirituality in dark mode for demonolators and left-hand path practitioners. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to share this, because I've been trying to find a way to put this into words for some time, because honestly, I just don't know where it exists outside of very modern and contemporary stuff. And maybe by sharing this, somebody will drop something in the comments, pointing me into the direction to learn more. On that note, I think I'm done with this video. Thank you again, and if you're still here, thanks for listening. As always, take care, and much love. Unfortunately, this is one of those instances where I'm gonna have to say I don't fucking know.
And this is a very understandable reaction when talking about draconian magic in any fashion. So I'm going to talk about this subject completely from my point of view, which is that there is an Irish draconic path, you could say, but it's effectively a part of the Credeshi, the fairy faith of Ireland. And that gets into a whole thing, because dragons are not fairies, but they're technically she. So, from my context, at least within the culture that I grew up with, because the fairy faith is not a monolith anywhere, even different families in the same region are going to have vastly different opinions, but it's a subsection of a much larger faith. And I think within any cultural context, that's basically what it's going to be, even if an individual person is particularly focused in the draconic path of their culture. In general, in occultic circles, draconian magic kind of falls under two different subsections, and then people go from there. There is one which is theistic, and the other is effectively atheistic, but it would probably be better to say metaphorical. And the metaphorical generally kind of falls under definitely your more left-hand path stuff, in the sense of like becoming your own god, becoming like the vampire, becoming like, blank, incredibly powerful creature. And then there's theistic, which is either incredibly specifically cultural, or, as Jekyll said, patchwork of different culture groups trying to come together and make a specific path of that because someone has a hyperfixation on dragons, which is not a bad thing. There is just a lot of respect and the dealing with different dragons culturally. And in modern practice, unfortunately, a lot of things that fall under dragon magic or draconian magic, etc., is inspired by D&D. Now, I tabletop roleplay all the time, but I have a completely different channel for that. But you'll find, especially in a lot of the times, like, when people bring in, like, the color of dragons being incredibly important, it will almost be a 1-for-1 on the associations of this color and this dragon for the occult, and the color associations with the fantastical elements of D&D, which in my opinion was not helped by the book by DJ Conway that's specifically called Dragon Magic. But yes, in the Irish pagan and fairy faith, because arguably they're separate things, but that's mostly because you can put the fairy faith in other circumstances. Dragons are their own thing. They do everything themselves, in the sense that, like, dragons aren't exactly going up to the fey courts of winter and summer and all of that. Dragons are dealing with everything within their community. In fact, a sea and loch monster that is a relatively famous dragon that even St. Patrick had to deal with is wingless because of a punishment from other dragons. And in the specific tradition that I grew up with, dragon ley lines are a thing, and we call them that because that's more or less the easiest way to state what they are. But we do recognize other ley lines for different magics or different magical sources, so there's that. So Jekyll said something along the lines of that it is the energetic spreading out of the earth. I would say it is like specifically the draconic ley lines are a system, like the respiratory system, meaning while the other ley lines would be other systems. So as far as the question of is there a traditional draconic magic, not really. It would be a subsection of a much larger tradition that you're probably going to be hard-pressed to find because, dragon symbology in Christianity and dragon symbology in general. Just look at Wales and the red and the white dragon. Only supremacist groups are going to choose to be represented by the white dragon for the most part, unless they're going off of a completely different, legend of a white dragon. So yeah, talking about draconic magic is complicated, and then trying to sort out what's real and what's not would require basically knowledge on almost every culture, because I only know about what I was taught, and even that doesn't encompass the whole of the Irish tradition on dragons, or even the Isle Celtic tradition on dragons, because I do research. Jekyll also makes a really good point in people identifying things as dragons that were probably never originally considered dragons. He specifically uses the Leviathan and Jorgamander. As a Norse pagan, I'm in agreement about Jorgamander, but yeah. So there is a lot of talk about, whether these things are dragons, whether they can have draconic aspects, whether they originally had draconic aspects culturally, and in my opinion, whether we should call them dragons. I forget who made the quote, but there's someone who quoted that we only call Chinese dragons dragons because someone made the comparison. I do not know enough about any Asian or Southeast Asian or any of that culture to really say, yes, this about their culture is correct, yes, we can call them dragons, etc. But I am going to put that is a complicated thing added to the discussion. Valid research, valid path. I know a bunch of people who are into working with dragons, and they do so respectfully. But to act like that there is some long-standing tradition of dragon magic that only worked with dragons is a falsehood.